that brings you the real stories, but that also challenges each and every one of you. Today we're in Ghana, but we know that you can see us across the ECOWAS region. You can probably see us around the world. My name is Anita Erskine, and today we jump into a conversation that not only means a lot to myself and generations to come, but means a lot to our region. And when you think of West Africa, what comes straight to mind? For a lot of us, the first thing you think of is how we are a global powerhouse for cocoa, mango, pineapple, shea, cashew. I could go on and on and on. But have you ever wondered, why is it that we're only benefiting from a tiny fraction of the value of these raw commodities? Well, today our mandate is absolutely simple. How do we come together, or perhaps how do we charge each other with one very powerful action? That action, moving from exporting these raw materials into processing them, producing them, and ultimately creating prosperity, not only for the West African region, but for the entire continent. Today, I have some professionals around the table, I have some passionate individuals around the table, but I have you African, you individual who's been thinking, Anita, how do we create prosperity for the continent? Right here, we share those stories, we share those actions, and hopefully we walk away with essential to-do lists for yourself, for us, for the organizations that are represented at this table, but ultimately perhaps for us as Africans. Ladies and gentlemen, to start off this very wonderful program, I'd like to throw it to Dr. George Ajikum Donko, President and Chairman of the Board of Directors of EBID. Let's take a listen to what Dr. Ajikum Donko has to say.
Good morning, distinguished guests, development partners, agro-industry leaders. Good morning, distinguished guests, development partners, agro-industry leaders, esteemed colleagues.
So I believe that in a second we're going to that, but let me use this opportunity to introduce my guests who are sitting right next to me. On my right, perhaps on your left, we've got Mr. Kyle Cullifar, and Kyle is a Senior Country Director for Ghana, Liberia, and Sierra Leone of IFC. Kyle, how are you?
Good morning.
Good morning. You're very welcome. We do have right next to Kyle, Mr. Ange Pascal Kouassi, Country Representative for Ghana and Liberia of Proparco. Pascal, you're welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Right next to me, Dr. Andrews Amankwa, Director, Treasury and Resource Mobilization of EBID. You're very, very welcome. I'll put you on the spot.
Thank you, Anita. It's a pleasure to be on stage.
Pleasure is all mine. And of course, last, definitely not the least, we have somebody who, if I say he's a former CEO of Cadbury Ghana, you will know who he is. But today, he's one of Ghana's most celebrated farmers, Mr. James Boateng. You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Wonderful. And now I do believe that we're ready for that video. Let's take a listen to what Dr. George Ajikum Donko, President and Chairman of the Board of Directors of EBID, has to say to start off the program.
Smart group of companies, NA Tobinco group of companies, Elder Dr. Amotobin Etano.
Church of Pentecost Teshinungwa area in Shona District Ninungwa Subzone Apostle Dr. Delapampa Eya Womu area head in Damiensa Crusade what to say Nungwa for Christ Crusade Ebromo Asentita Eda Crusade no so me Yesu moja daso kasa Yesu la Ewie Olo Crusade no besha se efibu Fiada 26 November na ye Fiada 28 November 2025 Crusade no possible Nungwa main lorry station authority near any musek odin hwenini debia ye be share no siampa mu kosi nonko akasafo a eba dwumadi na se any apostle Dr. Delapampa ye Teshinungwa area he Apostle Felix Ochianti our Western Minister our PIWC Western Pastor Paul AJ our area evangelism leader any Pastor Isaac Osei dwumadi esinesreso na oye in Shona District Pastor afi ajomtofo a eba any Teshinungwa area mass kwa me in Shona District kwa Nungwa for Christ Crusade Yesu moja bekasa Yesu la barie
God is for us. Who can be against us? Come join us, count our blessings, for the Lord has been good. It's the Just Born Zoom Lion Annual Thanksgiving Service 2025. Brought to you in collaboration with PIWC Chuasaco, Free Church of the Church of Pentecost, and the Central Mosque. It's a moment of reflection and gratitude to God. With our fathers of the faith, such as Apostle Dr. Delapampa, Bishop Emeritus Jimsa, Reverend Isud Anaba, and the host, Elder Dr. Joseph Siawa Japan. This is coming up on the 8th to 12th December 2025 across all designated centers nationwide, starting at 6 a.m. each morning. You can participate via our online platforms at Zoom Lion Limited and Jospon Group on Facebook and YouTube. Media partners, Metro TV, Prince Media Center, Original TV and Original Affair. Don't be left out.
Rest. The Church of Pentecost Kaswa area is inviting you to the Truba for Christ Crusade under the theme Jesus is the answer. This life transforming crusade is scheduled for Tuesday 25th November to Friday 28th November 2025 at the King David Academy Park near PIWC Mountain View along the Kaswa Tuba Road at 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. each evening. There will be morning sessions as well from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. at PIWC Mountain View. Speakers are Apostle Samuel Jaru Obobi, the General Secretary of the Church of Pentecost, Apostle James Kwabna Esami, Kaswa Area Head, Apostle Professor Christian Tipo, and Apostle Johnny Lati Popa, both from the Pentecost School of Theology and Missions. Get ready for anointed ministrations informed by Jack Arulome, Ruth Ejay, and Efia Gospel. The program will be climaxed with free health screening. Come with your family and friends. Truba for Christ. Jesus is the answer.
The Church of Pentecost, Kaswa area, Budumburam Top District, at the Budumburam Top for Christ Crusade, El Premo, Asentitra Edachedi and Sonne, Sawuni Yesua, Wuninkwa, Judgment because I have another 9 December, Kosi Yawada 11 December 2025. Shani so say, and of Halo, Yabeshiamu, Siakosin of Watu, Budumburam Top Central Assembly, Macedonia, in Renos, Yabeshiamu, Siakosin on Crew, Petrol Filling Station, Echi. Liberia come. Woma Womobe Casa with Jumedi Nasenim, Apostle James Kwabna Asari, our Yekaswa area head, Apostle Emmanuel Kwesiapia.
Is the fourth edition of the EBID President's Roundtable. Today, a conversation that is absolutely crucial for all of us, from the farm to the port, financing the value chains of West Africa's cash crops. I'm jumping and putting you straight on, I would like to call it on the platform, Andrew. Unfortunately, I would have liked to give you a buffer, but you're on the hot seat to start off right now. Andy, let's talk about EBID, and let's talk about how EBID should balance the imperative of financial returns with its developmental mandate when investing in nascent or higher risk agro-processing ventures.
Thank you very much, Anita. Let me just take a step back by trying to set the tone for this discussion by actually defining what we mean by the missing middle. I think it is very important to put that into perspective, and then it will probably drive our discussion forward. The missing middle, I would define it as the agro-processing, small and medium enterprises, and also the integrated infrastructure connecting farms to factories and then to ports. So it is very important for ECOWAS to be able to realize its potential as far as the global trade is concerned. We need to connect those missing dots. And that will even help ECOWAS to actually improve its overall GDP. Now I go specifically to your question. EBID is a profitable bank, and we would continue being profitable. But the most important key to note is that at the heart of our business is our development impact. Every project that we finance, we have to find what the development impact is. And we are able to do this through our robust credit appraisal process, which is actually hinged on 4 key pillars. And the key pillars are bankability, viability, profitability, and of course, maximum development impact. So in the appraisal process, this is where we interact with all the key stakeholders to make sure that at the end of the day, the project that we are financing is speaking to our developmental impact heart. So that is one of the ways that we do it. Another way we do it is also the fact that we use a blended financing model, where we are able to, my role in the bank is actually the Director for Resource Mobilization. So I'm able to bring resources from grants, from impact funds, green and climate funds, concessional funding sources, and of course, non-concessional funding sources, which we are able to blend together to offer low cost of financing for projects, and also at times we even lend below the market. So internally, this is how our financial model is used to achieve that balance between profitability and, of course, concessionality. The final point I want to highlight just briefly, because I believe I will have the opportunity to go deeper into it, is our intervention mechanisms. Our intervention mechanisms include long-term loans, where we are able to offer loans to about 25 years. We also have equity participation, which we do to actually catalyze the start of industries within our member states. And then we also have our guarantee mechanism, which we use to de-risk investment in our preparation stages. So essentially, these are the 3 keys that I want to talk about for now. But as we develop the conversation, I'm sure I'm able to put a little more color into some of these key points that I have brought up, Anita.
Andy, I thank you so much, because this highlighting, this part of the conversation, the missing middle, we're also, focusing on financing, we're focusing on regulations, etc. And you've set the pace, or you have set the tone. I bring it to you, James. Andy talks about bankability, profitability, but earlier on we were talking about risk, and you are a farmer and you are on the ground, and a lot of people talk about agriculture being risky. From your perspective, from this operator's perspective that you have, what are the top 3 cost or risk drivers that make, perhaps it's cocoa or cashew, in your case, sometimes mango, pineapple, whatever it is. But what makes these areas, the processing of these materials, perhaps unbankable?
Okay, thank you. I'll just spend a brief time talking about the opportunities for some of these so that we can situate the conversation properly. Now, I'd like to talk about global numbers very briefly. Let me pick mangoes. The global size of mango business is over 50 billion US dollars. That's how much mango is really earned. Cocoa is around $30 billion. Cashew is about $20 billion, etc. Oil palm, you can guess it. So we're talking about such a huge opportunity in the global market versus really what we are doing in West Africa. Apart from La Côte d'Ivoire, which is probably earning around $1 billion from mango exports. La Côte d'Ivoire is earning around $1.5 billion from fruit exports. Ghana is doing, especially for mangoes, less than $100 million. So I'd like to situate the situation this way. And I'll try to focus my discussion on what pertains in the Ghanaian environment, talk a little bit also about some of the other countries within the sub-region. So in terms of risk, the first risk really has to do with the raw material. When we are looking at the entire value chain, I call it touch points. And it's important that you look at touch points, all the points that you would touch which will trigger a result. And the first touch point really is from the farmer's gate. And this is where we find the first risk, and it has to do with raw material quality. Cocoa, mangoes, cashew, oil palm have to be delivered at the factory gate at a certain moisture level, for instance. And if the moisture levels are higher, especially for cocoa and cashew, then you begin to have levels free, what they call in the industry, free fatty acids. If you have free fatty acids beyond a certain point, then you have quality issues. Now, once you get these quality issues, then it means that you're going to suffer in terms of your sales. It has huge impact on the processes, working capital. It affects cash. The next risk factor has to do with what has been happening in the last 2 years or so. Just the sheer availability of cocoa. Ghana is doing around half of what it used to do some probably 10, 15 years ago of cocoa, driven largely by climate change and biological issues. Galamsey has its own impact, but the truth today is that Ghana is doing not probably more than 600,000 metric tons of, not more than 600,000 metric tons of cocoa. La Côte d'Ivoire has also suffered some shortage, also largely driven by some of these climate-related challenges. Now, once this happens, then processors must look for extra cash to go and buy whether cocoa or cashew nut. Now, briefly on cocoa, prices hiked from about $3,500 per ton to as high as about $9,000 per ton, simply driven by supply gaps. It's now settling back to $5,000 per ton or so. Now, when you have such volatilities in global commodity pricing, it definitely makes planning very difficult. It does not give the processor the required predictability to be able to look for a financier or a creditor to look for credit. So most processors are crowded out because, there's no predictability or certainty. especially with what is happening. The next point has to do with energy cost. Huge, huge risk. In Ghana, for instance, the cost of electricity per kilowatt hour is around 17 US cents. It's higher in some other West African countries. Probably Nigeria is the cheapest. But energy cost as part of the processing cost, the product cost, is still very high. And it's not just the cost, it's the reliability. If you lose from the national grid, you lose the power, and you have a process flow, and you got products in the machines, and a little flicker can render the entire batch of production off spec. And that is a loss. And every processor, whether cashew, mango, or cocoa, is suffering this. Anita, if I may, let me just mention a fourth risk, and that has to do with just the sheer weight of compliance. This is the era of compliance. So buyers of processed cocoa, cashew, mango are asking for certifications and compliance against some set global standards. So everything from food safety to sustainability. There is the European Union is just by introducing what they call the EUDR, the European Deforestation Regulation. And if you do not demonstrate as a processor that you've sourced cocoa without degrading the forest, your processed cocoa will not be bought. It's as simple as that. It's starting. And with all these compliances come with cost. And they all affect the processor's profitability. It affects the working capital. It does not give you a steady cash flow. The kind of things that financiers want to see as your track record to be able to decide that you are bankable. So these are just some of the top 4 risks that I can talk about.
But James, you promised me that by the end of this conversation, you will take us to the light at the end of the tunnel. All right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for us to take a listen to the president and board chair of EBID's opening remarks, as it were. Take a listen, take a look.
Good morning, distinguished guests, development partners, agro-industry leaders, esteemed colleagues. I would like to welcome you very warmly to the 4th edition of the EBID President's Roundtable. Our theme, quote, from the farm to the port, financing the value chains of West African cash crops, unquote, goes to the heart of EBID's mandate and to the core of our sub-region's development aspirations. Indeed, West Africa is a global leader in cocoa, cashew, shea, and cotton. Yet, too often, our participation in the value chain ends at the farm gate. The segments of the cash crop value chain that creates the most jobs and fuel industrial growth elude us because we export raw materials rather than finished goods. It is more than an economic inefficiency. It is a missed opportunity for job creation, rural transformation, export diversification, building international reserves, and industrial revolution. This roundtable is designed not for abstract debate, but for solutions. As the leading regional development finance institution in West Africa, EBID understands both the promise and the pain points of our agro-industrial journey. The bank sees clearly the missing middle, that is, a viable small and medium industries with the potential to process, package, certify, and deliver quality products at scale, but constrained by the cost of capital, the absence of reliable enabling infrastructure, the lack of effective regulation, and the fragmentation of logistics and energy systems. Bridging this gap is not a matter of aspiration. It is a matter of design. It requires de-risk patient and catalytic capital, combined with technical assistance, market access, deliberate actions, and integrated infrastructure that connects the farm to the factory and the factory to the port. During this discussion, ladies and gentlemen, I kindly invite you to keep 4 principles in view. 1, regionality by design. Value chains do not stop at borders. Our financing and policy coordination must reflect ECOWAS wide scale, standardization, and interoperability, especially under the AFTA. Number two, de-risking with discipline. Credit guarantees, first loss tranches, and offtake back structures must be deployed where they crowd in private capital, not to replace it. Three, industrial depth over volume. Our goal is not more exports of raw commodities. It is more export of finished and intermediate goods that retain value, build skills, and create quality jobs. And finally, sustainability and inclusion. Climate smart production, responsible sourcing, and the participation of women and youth in enterprise and ownership are not add-ons. They are core to the long-term competitiveness. By the end of today's dialogue, I hope that we merge with a concise, actionable set of priorities, specific financing instrument fit for agro-industry, a short list of enabling infrastructure with clear sequencing, and a partnership framework that aligns key players around bankable pipelines. EBID stands ready to lead by co-creating risk-sharing facilities, structuring blended vehicles, and deploying technical assistance to move projects from concept to close. This is a moment to convert our natural endowments into industrial strength and to ensure that the wealth created by West Africa's farms is retained, multiplied, and exported as finished value. Quote, from the farm to the port, financing the value chains of West Africa's cash crop, unquote. It's not just a theme. It is a corridor of opportunity. Let us build it together. Thank you for your kind attention, and I wish you fruitful discussions during this 4th edition of EBID's President Roundtable. Merci beaucoup. Thank you. Muito obrigado.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. And Kyle, this then brings me to you. We need to move from that little tiny fraction to literally building those factories, necessary factories, highlighting the importance of infrastructure, and prioritizing the financial systems that can make us a lot more profitable or prosperous, if you may put it that way. But then staying in this kind of the missing middle, which is what we like to call this session, Kyle, where do you see the strongest pipeline of investable agro-processing SMIs in the sub-region?
Oh, thank you, Anita, and an excellent question. Look, from the IFC perspective, and remember, the IFC, the International Finance Corporation, we're the private sector supporting agency in the World Bank Group. So similar to EBID, we have the same approach of development impact and improving people's lives and satisfactory environmental and social conditions, as well as commercial viability, that it's sustainable financially over the long run, with the overarching goal of job creation, more and better jobs for the people of this part of the world. When you take a step back and look at the global lens, and I'm a bit biased because this is my second time serving in the region for IFC, but previously I spent 12 years in Asia, particularly Vietnam and Bangladesh. You have Asia that historically was very active in a lot of this sector, particularly agriculture production, agriculture value addition, where the demographics have stabilized. And so you actually have potentially more jobs than people in that part of the world. So you have jobs migrating or market opportunities migrating to other parts of the world. And that's why we IFC see here today throughout the sub-region opportunities that didn't exist 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, across a range of sectors, including both the middle as well as the upstream that enables the middle, i.e. tomato production that will make viable a tomato factory, or maize production that will make viable a fish factory or a shrimp factory or a poultry factory. So we're seeing more and more upstream opportunities, taking advantage of the inherent comparative advantages of the entire region, but of course, I'm biased, Ghana in particular, of land, water, increasingly better infrastructure. And as a result, and I'll give you one simple example. You think of the Akosombo Dam. When Kwame Nkrumah's time, it actually had 3 goals: power generation, flood control, but agricultural development. And now today we're seeing that third leg taking foot as we see the Afram Plains, more and more large-scale commercial projects develop on the primary supply chain that is going to help create that middle and that large-scale job creation for processing that what takes place up on the lake.
Thank you so much, Kyle. Pascal, it just feels like maybe this is the best time. Kyle has highlighted, let's just take the Akosombo Dam as an example, ultimately helping to inspire agriculture. Let's focus a little bit on Proparco. And often you focus on large-scale private sector investments, but how does Proparco's investment strategy for agri-industrial SMIs in West Africa complement, or differ, if you like, from the DFIs like EBID, who have brought us here today?
Okay. Again, Anita, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this program. I'm very delighted to be here. But before touching on the question at stake, I think that's important to give you a bit of context regarding Proparco's operations. Proparco is the subsidiary of the French Development Agency, which is dedicated to the private sector in emerging and developing countries. So basically, we belong to AFD Group. And in the AFD Group, there are three entities. AFD, which work with the public sector. There is Proparco, in charge of the private sector, and Expertise France, in charge of technical assistance and capacity building. To your question, 150 million euros. This is how much money Proparco invests every year to support the food system in Africa. And 25% of that is dedicated to West Africa. How do we deploy this capital? We do it through loans, equity, guarantees, and technical assistance. And this is how our approach is similar to IFC and EBID. And as a DFI, we have clearly two key approaches. The first approach is through partnership. Partnership to us is very critical. Partnership with commercial banks, partnership with private equity funds. The key idea is to provide capital as well as guidance to scale up many SMEs, including those operating in the agri sector. The second approach at Proparco is through direct investment. That's also very important. That means we are going to provide funding directly to SMEs, and that's very critical. And some years back, we created Digital Africa. It is a subsidiary of Proparco, which is dedicated to the digital sector. Through this subsidiary, we can back agri-tech companies, which are also important to the agricultural value chain. To your second point, risk management. How do we manage risk? One of the key issues when it comes to access to funding for SMEs is access to collateral. That's very important. There are many SMEs out there which are very profitable. But however, when it comes to secure funding from commercial bank, it's very challenging for them to provide collaterals. So Proparco provide risk-sharing facility to commercial banks so they can use that to provide funding to SMEs. Last year, for instance, here in Ghana, Proparco provided 20 million euros. That's about 260 million Ghana cedis to support SMEs. So that's key to us. So risk-sharing facility is important, but it's not enough. There is another point, the issue of governance. That's very important, because this question of access to funding boils down to how we make our SMEs commercially viable enough to attract funding from commercial banks or other financiers. And that's very critical. And Proparco also play an important role in that space.
Pascal, I'm going to borrow Proparco's mandate and almost throw it to you, James. And again, I hate to put you on the spot here, but I cannot remove the fact that you used to be a successful CEO. You are a successful former CEO of Cadbury Ghana. Let me take you back there just a little bit.
Right.
Now that you've heard what our panelists, our conversations have contributed to, and even yourself, as I would like to call somebody on the ground, you've shared the risks. Let's tap into Cadbury's strategy, if we may borrow that. What did it take to reach that consistent quality at scale? Right. And if I could ask you, how would you perhaps redesign the financing stack if you were building that plant today, having heard what we've heard here today?
Right. Thank you. So I'll talk about Cadbury, but a kind of business for Cadbury that some of us inherited probably close to 20 years ago was one where Cadbury, the big group is there, very glossy, very nice. The subsidiary was struggling really with financing, funding, in spite of the fact that Cadbury had a legacy with Ghana, starting their cocoa business way back in the 19th century, right on the high street. So there was that attachment, but business is not run merely on emotions and sentiments. There has to be facts. So together with the rest of my team, we inherited a business where we needed to make sure that we built scale and at the same time maintained quality. So the first bit of it was just for us to put in place. And Pascal spoke about viability, which is really, if you want to attract funding, then you must demonstrate viability. And that was the message to us. Group decided not to fund us, that prove viability and then look for funding. That was our story. And so we decided that, one, we would just go straight for operational discipline. Now, before then, I think that, there was very basic systems like enterprise resource management, where you put sales and operational planning in place and make sure that demand really drives everything you do, supported by an IT system called SAP. Looks simple. We lack that competence. So, for instance, we were overstocking on inventories and we're locking cash. We're running out of cash. The working capital was totally out of business. So, first of all, we decided that, listen, we are a business and we will put a system in place. Anything we do will be driven by demand and profitability. So we put in, as I said, a sales and operational planning process, SAP system. You need to plug it into the system, and it guided and gave us the discipline. You couldn't do anything outside the SAP system because there was oversight outside Ghana. Somebody sat in London and Singapore checking everything. So if you are procuring too much cocoa, vis-a-vis sugar, which you need as part of your recipe, somebody can actually block you. So we decided to install that. So it was about process discipline, operational discipline. Another thing we did was just to make sure that we ensured quality, because whatever we were going to sell, fortunately we had a huge competitor by name Nestle. And if you have a huge competitor, then you need to behave in business. Otherwise, they can knock you off. So for us, it turned out to be an opportunity. So we looked at sourcing cocoa not from any backyard, because it's all about quality. We sourced cocoa from Cargill, the best place that we thought. And if we didn't get Cargill cocoa, we went to ADM. So we went to multinational. So we had an ambition. We were bold. We needed that courage to be able to survive. Another thing we did as we were building the scale was to decide to invest in people, because all these systems I'm talking about was about people driving them. The best engineers, we put them in place, the best IT people, not a lot of them, but the best, who shared in the ambition. And they came and they drove this. And we put in proper training. In fact, in manufacturing, if you want to do repetitive things consistently, you put in what we call standard operating procedures. So you do not always have to go and reinvent the wheel. There are certain things, if you come, this is the way you turn on that machine. You turn the boilers on, heat them before you go and turn the liquidators. So strict standard operating procedures. And after we put the standard operating procedures in place, we needed to really track our quality. Very important. Because previously, Cadbury had produced some products which were off-spec, and it cost financially, cost the company. So we put in, because we told ourselves that in business, what you cannot measure, you cannot manage. If you can't measure it, you cannot manage it. So really, we had various intersection points where we stopped and checked on quality along the line. Then, after we had secured utilities, were cash-strapped, if you like, we realized that the only way we could put in supplementary energy continue producing as our volumes were growing. We needed to put in some alternative energies because we couldn't rely on the grid. We didn't have cash, so we went to a leasing option. It was part of the cocktail of financing. So we went to leasing. What it did for us was to help us hold the cash to be able to do the recurrent expenditures, while the leasing company only charged us a fee for a period. So we were able to move on. I think I've just got a couple of things that we did. And then we now decided that at the end of the day, the product is really not valuable until it's a brand. A brand is what consumers see. So we decided to rationalize the brand portfolio. Cadbury had all sorts of brands on the portfolio. Some were laggards, not bringing much money. They were there for sentimental reasons, and so we delisted them, and we focused on the chocolate brands, which were really doing well. And by the time that we were done, we were even exporting some of the chocolate drink brands to big Nigeria from here. And over a period of time, we realized we were growing, we're getting the scale whilst we maintained the quality, and at some stage, Cadbury Ghana became only next to Pakistan in terms of market growth. Now, just for a minute, I will not talk specific figures, but at the time that we started introducing quality whilst we built scale, Cadbury Ghana was doing something like 5 million units of whatever. But down the line, 7 years, we started getting revenues in terms of 100 million. So indeed, you can scale up without losing control over quality, but you need to put in the appropriate systems.
Okay. And you've just given us a masterclass to each and every single innovative young entrepreneur on how to move your product from your farm or from your home, wherever it is you produce it, right to the consumer's gate. Thank you so much. And that brings us to beyond the factory gate, integrating SMEs into formal value chains, which we'll jump straight into. Andy, you'll jump into that when we come back from the break. This is the 4th edition of the EBID President's Roundtable. My name is Anita Erskine. Let's go for a quick break. We'll be right back.
West Africa accounts for a greater share of the global supply of cocoa, cotton, cassava, and maize, to name a few. Most of these crops leave our shores in their raw state, with very little value added, leaving the sub-region at the bottom end of the value chain. It's time to change this narrative. As the leading development finance institution in West Africa, the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, EBID, is financing the missing middle, that is, the agro-industrial SMEs and the infrastructure that connects the farms to the factories and the ports within the framework of the AFCFTA. Join live on 24th November 2025 from 11 o'clock GMT on Metro TV Ghana, DSTV Channel 277, and EBID's digital platforms for the Presidential Roundtable on the theme From the Farm to the Port, Financing the Value Chains of West Africa's Cash Crops. Dr. George Ejekum Donko, President and Chairman of the Board of Directors of EBID, will be joined by leading experts to identify concrete, financeable strategies to industrialize West Africa's agricultural sector. The dialogue will focus on pinpointing key bottlenecks in agricultural value chains and defining the role of DFIs in addressing them through innovative financing, technical assistance, and strategic partnerships. Tune in on 24th November 2025 at 11 o'clock GMT on Metro TV Ghana, DSTV Channel 277, and EBID's digital platforms for the Presidential Roundtable on From the Farm to the Port, Financing the Value Chains of West Africa's Cash Crops. ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, EBID, transforming ECOWAS communities.
So, ladies and gentlemen, as EBID focuses on transforming, our communities, one of the things that is crucial and important is to understand which elements, which pillars are crucial and must be integrated. And for us, SMEs are one of those pillars, if I may call it that way. So we're coming to this conversation and this session that is aptly titled Beyond the Factory Gate, Integrating SMEs into Formal Value Chains. And I bring you right back into this, Andy. Let's talk about EBID's proposed model to finance the connective tissue, where we're talking about aggregation, warehousing, logistics, certification, and traceability.
Thank you, Anita. I think I will highlight only 4 of our key intervention measures. The first one being equity stake in agricultural value chains, where we actually take a substantial investment in those companies and try to use our influence to drive the viability, to drive the profitability, and also to optimize the development impact of that agri-value chain. And I can give you 2 examples. We have done that with African Agriculture Fund, and we have done same with Africa Food Security Fund. The second mechanism that we use, I briefly touched on it in my first summation, which is long-term financing, which most commercial banks cannot do. There are examples where we've gone as far as even 25 years financing. And what that does is that it provides sort of a low-cost financing to allow the project to fully mature and then endure the benefits of its existence. So we have done that. I can cite 2 examples where we've done a cocoa processing facility and a cotton processing facility in Côte d'Ivoire and Benin, respectively. The third intervention measure is also through our guarantee mechanism, which we also use to de-risk investment in the agri value chain. That we have also done successfully over our some of our member states. And the last intervention that we use, which is actually my favorite, is the technical services and the advisory support that we give to enable small and medium enterprises to actually meet international standards, to gain certification, and also even gain competitive advantage. Because as we said from the beginning, Africa, or West Africa, is endowed with so much in our agricultural space, which we need to capitalize on to actually impact positively on our performance in the global market and also our respective GDPs.
Andy, I have to say that the last intervention is also my favorite. Education, education, education. Of course, at the end of the day, if the information is not available, if the education is not available, we cannot be competitive. And perhaps, Kyle, that's where I bring you in. Not talking about education, but I've been a long-standing collaborator and a friend of IFC, and I've seen how much work you've invested into small operators. So can you highlight how IFC can structure scalable working capital solutions for these smaller operators?
Delighted. From our perspective, SMEs are a key source of job creation in any country, but particularly here in Ghana. And IFC, we like to bring, we are the largest development finance institution in the world. And so over the last 2 years, we have brought over $800 million to Ghana alone of commercial finance, equity, guarantees, loans. But leveraging that experience, we try to think of innovative, structured solutions to help better mobilize working capital and working capital facilities, how to help the private sector, including SMEs, better leverage their assets, their resources. For instance, private sector credit here in Ghana is roughly 9-10%. It's 120% over in Vietnam. So there's 12 times more credit for businesses in that part of the world. So how do we better enable that? It's helping with the ORC to help informal become formal and better access formal finance. It's about credit registries, movable, immovable, to help enterprises better access their existing assets. It's about credit scoring, enabling good borrowers to leverage that history for lower cost future capital. And then you layer on top the whole digital revolution, layering the whole fintech space that's now bringing a whole new element of de-risking, whether it's forecasting weather, whether it's connecting markets, whether it's knowledge sharing on the vast scale to help these SMEs better de-risk and become more bankable. So we're seeing more structured products, short-term receivable finance, working capital. This year alone, we're actually keen on potentially $300 to $400 million for the cocoa sector alone for short-term working capital solutions to better enable that whole supply chain to exist.
Thank you so much, Kyle. But Kyle, would you say that small operators are increasingly seeing the value of IFC, are increasingly feeling the investment of IFC?
I'd like to think they are, and I think they're going to see it even more. As we see more opportunities in the agricultural space, as we see more opportunities as a result of the fintechs and the digital, as we see banks become much more active in lending, and with regard to, we have risk-sharing facilities with 3 banks now. We're going to add another 4 more, bringing large sources of capital. But lastly, another key element of mobilizing SMEs is enabling anchor tenants, anchor enterprises that are processors or large-scale farmers that create the market, that create the infrastructure, the roads, the connectivity, the offtake for the small stakeholders. Let me give you just one small example. Historically, Sierra Leone imported nearly 100% of its onions. A local company that supplied onion-based products decided to reverse engineer that and see if they could grow onions locally. Today, as we speak, they've commenced operations and they're on a pathway between the farm itself and ancillary stakeholders in the periphery of the farm, roughly half on the farm, roughly half stakeholders, of providing 100% of Sierra Leone's needs for onions. So that commercial stakeholder has created this market for all the small-scale onion farmers.
Extraordinary. Proparco, Pascal, You have highlighted Proparco's strategy when it comes to supporting these maybe small operators, entrepreneurs, startups, SMEs, and that is the heartbeat of Proparco. So let's talk about how you continue to support them, especially the local ones in West Africa, and how you help them to scale their financing solutions specifically, and speaking specifically about agricultural SMEs. How do you do that? What's Proparco's strategy?
Again, I would like to share a figure with you because figures speak for themselves.
Of course.
Yeah. Last year, Proparco invested 2.8 billion euros all over the world, and 43% of that was dedicated to financial institutions. What does it mean? That means that financial institutions are critical to Proparco's operations because they have branches across countries, and we think that at Proparco, we need to leverage these local financial institutions to channel our funding towards SMEs, and that's very key. Now, what do we do with these financial institutions? Provide them with credit line. That's very important. For on-lending, that's key. The second point is risk-sharing facility to tackle the issue of access to collateral I have talked about earlier. And finally, we also work with private equity funds and venture capital funds. And that's very important because the issue of access to funding, as I said, boils down to how we make these SMEs commercially viable enough. I know that there are some public bodies which provide technical assistant training. Here in Ghana, we have the Ghana Enterprise Agency, the Ghana Investment Promotion Centers. They are also Chamber of Commerce. They do it. They are also private incubators and accelerators to empower entrepreneurs. That's very key. But we also need to have an investment professional who will stand by the entrepreneurs to coach them, to mentor them, to scale up their businesses, because risk-sharing facility is not going to tackle some of the key issues that many SMEs face, including governance, or problem with clients, or problem with suppliers. So that's very critical. So I think that relying on financial institutions to us is very key to channel funding toward these SMEs. Yeah.
So James, you see, Proparco has spoken passionately. IFC has spoken strategically. EBID has spoken inspiringly. You are the one on the ground. Tell us what stops SMEs from entering these supply chains. What is the biggest fear that is probably removing their eyesight and their overview and their oversight on all these extraordinary opportunities that we're discussing here today?
Good. Thank you. I must say that I'm really excited, and even at my level, also a little bit surprised that there are all these funding opportunities, especially targeted towards SMEs. So before I talk about the barriers or the locks that are holding the SMEs from especially getting on the corporate value chain track and growing, because really that's where the jobs will be created. Before I talk about that, I'd like to suggest that we find a means to communicate. I don't know. SMEs sometimes are simply not aware. And if at my level, having led corporates and all that for years, 30 years, I'm not aware that these opportunities are there, then there is a little gap in terms of communication. Create the awareness. And I think that would be very useful. But let me just very briefly talk about what I call the thing that are locking SMEs from participating in corporate, big, profitable global supply chains. The first one, incidentally, is what we are discussing, the financial lock. Most SMEs have huge working capital issues. Unlike big corporate, which can sometimes enjoy between 90 days credit for raw materials, SMEs sometimes have to pay monies upfront. So assuming that they want to upscale, then they have a problem even getting the raw materials and creating manufacturing capacity to be able to do that. The second lock actually leads from this, and it has to do with just their scale. Sometimes SMEs may just be predominantly small and not even medium yet, and yet they may have the agility and the innovation to be able to drive growth. But just because they are small, they find it difficult getting onto the global value chain thing. Compliance, whether you are SME or whether you are global or you are big, this is the era of compliance. You got to make sure that your activities are sustainable. You're not destroying the environment. And then, so there is all sorts of compliances that are requisite to be able to participate. Otherwise, the big giants on the global supply chain will not even trade or engage you. And the sheer cost of compliance, putting the right systems, putting the right people, putting the right processes in place to be able to be compliant in terms of the environment, in terms of governance, in terms of societal responsibility and all of that. It's a big challenge for a lot of SMEs. I try to be compliant because I know that if I'm not compliant, I'm talking about my farm, because my farm may be small or medium, even though it's a 1,000-acre farm, but compared to the big farms out there, I'm small globally. So I think most of these are first-hand information that I have. The other one has to do with just the logistics. We're talking about infrastructure, where most SMEs are based, if they are aggregators, to even get raw materials out to aggregation centers to be able to sell to global supply chain dealers is an issue. And then the last point I want to mention, that in the light of inadequate information about banking, credit, funding, and especially multinational and multilateral lending, some SMEs are either too timid to even approach some, what Pascal and others are talking about. Yeah. Sometimes the timidity doesn't even end there. They are quite suspicious that if I even go there, they have a mindset that it will not work. So these are the things that lock them. But I think the overarching thing that we need to also be talking about is what I said first. We should find a way, because through the banks, the level of awareness and knowledge is not getting to the appropriate SMEs which have the potential. But these are the things that lock them out.
And it's a bit sad to say that, because I mean, Kyle, you've been on so many platforms and you've been very open and warm and welcoming of what IFC can do for a lot of these SMEs. May you add one or two words to what James has said? Perhaps in your experience, what scares them that we should debunk right here, because we have the platform to do that?
We are all keen on doing more, and we're doing a lot more. The reality is a lot of the folks we work with are intermediaries of the banks, and we're trying to incentivize the banks to go out and do more, and whether it's motivating through risk-sharing facilities, credit lines, technical assistance, training, digital. So the front line is often... But that's why we are here today. That's why we are always out there. But I also think we're at a unique opportunity, particularly here in Ghana. Because as inflation has come down to less than 10%, interest rates have come down, government's borrowing has come down. So bankers need to maximize returns for their shareholders. They still need to lend or take those assets and seek returns. And so we're seeing a lot more interest from the banking sectors to go out there and to lend more to corporates, to middle size, to SMEs in this market today than several years ago. There's where we have a unique opportunity here today, and we look forward to supporting it.
And it's going to happen. We're going for a quick break, but I got this message, and it says, I actually have to put it here. What we need more of is agribusiness incubation. There is a huge potential, but our young people want instant wealth. I mean, I was going to put that in later on, but James, in 30 seconds, I mean, your farm, you started farming when? How many years ago?
Started 2020, when I was in Coca-Cola.
Wow. And at this point, after so many years, your word of advice to any young person who says, you know what, it'll take me forever to see my money would be what? Because even when I plant roses, I say it'll take me forever for the rose to bloom. But James, in 30 seconds, what would be your advice to these young people?
My advice is to every young person is that indeed agriculture can be profitable and is profitable. The only thing is knowing what to plant or what to farm in, when to do it, where to do it, how to do it.
Wow.
So it's about the what, it's about the when, it's about the where, and it's about why you are even doing it. Thank you.
So to clarity to all of you who want to plant something today thinking that by tomorrow you should be a Pan-African billionaire because the sun is out and it's raining here in Ghana, James is just saying, take your time, do a little education. But when we come back, something that is also crucial, which has been mentioned, very quickly, the enabling infrastructure, energy and transport for the agro industry is crucial to the sustainability and, of course, the prosperity of what we're talking about today. All right, we'll be right back after the break.
West Africa accounts for a greater share of the global supply of cocoa, cotton, cassava, and maize, to name a few. Most of these crops leave our shores in their raw state, with very little value added, leaving the sub-region at the bottom end of the value chain. It's time to change this narrative. As the leading development finance institution in West Africa, the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, EBID, is financing the missing middle, that is, the agro-industrial SMEs and the infrastructure that connects the farms to the factories and the ports within the framework of the AFCFTA. Join live on 24th November 2025 from 11 o'clock GMT on Metro TV Ghana, DSTV Channel 277, and EBID's digital platforms for the Presidential Roundtable on the theme, From the Farm to the Port, Financing the Value Chains of West Africa's Cash Crops. Dr. George Ejekum Donko, President and Chairman of the Board of Directors of EBID, will be joined by leading experts to identify concrete, financeable strategies to industrialize West Africa's agricultural sector. The dialogue will focus on pinpointing key bottlenecks in agricultural value chains and defining the role of DFIs in addressing them through innovative financing, technical assistance, and strategic partnerships. Tune in on 24th November 2025 at 11 o'clock GMT on Metro TV Ghana, DSTV Channel 277, and EBID's digital platforms for the Presidential Roundtable on From the Farm to the Port, Financing the Value Chains of West Africa's Cash Crops. ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, EBID, transforming ECOWAS communities.
Now, you should hear how we are negotiating to buy more land. I think, Mr. Boateng, you've infiltrated the farmer in us. So I think I want to farm flowers. Do we have the right?
We do.
What kind of flowers can I farm? Put you on the spot.
I mean the roses and all those
Really?
exotic.
Exotic?
Parts of Kenya
Okay.
as tropical as Ghana,
Okay.
and Kenya exports huge volumes of flowers.
Okay, well, my middle name is Rose, so I might just go into rose farming. Go to IFC. No, I can't go directly to IFC, so I've got to find one of your partners to find the money. I said Kyle Califer sent me, so they must give me that loan. But let's talk about the infrastructure. James, earlier on you had talked about what deters SMEs, and so I want to bring it to you, Pascal. Let's talk about the infrastructure financing when it comes to supporting the agro industry. So describe to us, where does Proparco see the most impactful opportunities for investment in energy and transport infrastructure?
Okay, I think I see 3 impactful investment opportunities. First, turning agricultural waste into energy. That's possible. The second investment opportunities I'm considering is building freight railways to move goods from production areas to agro-processing areas or to ports. And the third one is port, marine or inland port expansion. That's very important. And when I look at these infrastructure, definitely I can say that Proparco has a track record to finance this type of infrastructure. I mean, some years back, Proparco provided 30 million euros for the construction of Lomé container terminal. And that is an important port here in West Africa. When it comes to turning energy, when it comes to turning agricultural waste into energy, Proparco back Biovea, it was a 135 million euros investment to turn oil palm waste into energy. So I think that Proparco has a track record to replicate this type of project in West Africa.
Fantastic. So, Andy, perhaps it's also then a good time to also bring in, EBID. What would you say EBID is taking into consideration to ensure that its energy investments translate into, we don't want just reliable, but we also want affordable power for agro-processing, considering their, often tight margins?
Thank you, Anita. I believe that energy access is very critical in actually addressing the missing middle that we've been talking about since the beginning of this conversation. But sadly to say, statistics indicate that over half of ECOWAS people, representing over 200 million people, lack access to reliable electricity. And you know what this does? It limits education outcomes, productivity, and even industrialization. So for us, addressing even the energy need is very critical. That is why we at EBID, we finance both conventional and renewable energy options, just to make sure that we have enough power to stabilize things for the small to medium enterprises to operate. We also finance production facilities, both grade and off-grade. And in Ghana here, we have investment in KTTP, in Pont Tema. We have investment in power generation also in Sierra Leone. We finance also transmission and distribution lines as a way of also encouraging SMEs and SMIs also in their path to industrialization. Pascal made an interesting comment which has stuck in my brain, that the facts speaks for themselves. So I just want to share a few track records of EBID with you in terms of numbers, in terms of dollars. Agro-processing facilities that we have financed over time, it's about 296 million USD. We have done energy, as I mentioned a few of them, to the tune of 393 million USD. Transport, Pascal mentioned harbors. We're also involved in even the rescaling of the port of Lomé. In that side of sector of the economy, we have invested about 910 million USD. And then one of the things that we also do very well is financial intermediation, where we lend to the commercial banks who are on the ground to be able to lend to small and medium enterprises, because they know them better. And in that space, we have over time put in over $1 billion USD. So the facts speaks for themselves. And we are not going to stop there. We're going to continue to do more for the benefit of our people.
And it's also quite interesting. We've said many times that there's a lot of, and James said it, there's a lot of information that we are not privy to. So it's almost quite positive and hopeful when you share these kinds of numbers with us as well. Kyle, let's talk about risk and how risk can be shared between utility, anchor tenants, and financiers to avoid stranded assets. Kyle.
This gets back to what we were just talking about, though. This critical infrastructure that's necessary to help make enterprises commercially viable. And I think together around this table, all of us have been collectively working on this. And I'll give you an example of the port. We just had the inauguration of the 1.5 billion phase expansion at the Meridian Port in Accra. That's $1.5 billion, of which 700 million IFC mobilized in conjunction with some of our partners here, all private sector money. What does that port bring? That is the fourth deepest seaport in all of Africa. It takes the biggest boats in the entire world, meaning Ghana is getting direct service directly to China, directly to Los Angeles, directly to Europe. That boat is coming straight to Ghana. So when you're putting your mangoes on that boat, it's going straight there. That's a competitive advantage. That's a reduced risk. That's a reduced cost for these agriculture exporters. Similar, we're seeing progress on other fronts. There's talk about commercializing a bit of the Volta Lake and bringing private transport and private port that could improve transport on the lake. But there's another game changer taking place throughout the region, but I'll give you an example here in Ghana, and that is economic zones, special economic zones, enterprise zones. Common all around the world, that when a company wants to build a factory, do they want to own the land? Do they want to negotiate? Do they want to take owning land risk? Or maybe somebody else does that for them and they just rent the warehouse or rent the factory. Power supply, same thing. Let the zone solve the power supply. Water supply, let the zone supply that. Submarine cable, let the zone supply that. So for instance, we had the sod cutting just a few weeks ago for the Dawa Industry Zone down outside of Tema, bringing large-scale enterprises in proximity to the port with 200 megawatts of solar power, direct Google cable accessing on, direct water supply. This is de-risking for large-scale corporates or middle corporates that want to create a value addition manufacturing. It's taking a lot of these risks off the table and letting them focus on the core business. Thank you.
So can we have a kumbaya moment here between EBID and IFC? Okay, and I give each of you 30 seconds to give me this answer. Can IFC and EBID co-lead green financing for energy efficient processing? Can we do that?
Yes, the answer is yes, and the discussion has started already. I was very happy to meet Kyle this morning because we actually started this discussion during the IMF World Bank meetings in Washington, D.C. in October, and I'm sure that we are going to continue this discussion. So, Anita, the answer is yes. And it started already.
Okay, so and Kyle, your
absolutely yes, and the reason is very simple: is that efficient and green are largely synonymous. The 200 megawatts of solar that we saw cut a few weeks ago down in the Dow Industrial, it's solar because it's efficient and it's low cost, and it's de-risking those investments for those investors and for those businesses in that zone. And it just happens to be solar and green, and we're seeing more and more of this. Yeah. And delighted to collaborate.
All right.
Well, Anita,
yes, go ahead, please.
Just to say that we also work with IFC, and because in 2018 in Senegal, we found together a solar project. So the collaboration between DFIs
is happening.
It's happening.
Now James just needs to feel the result of the collaboration. James, I'm fighting here for you. Yes. And I feel like we're running out of time, but James, I feel like this comes down to you because more than anybody else, you speak the language of the people on the ground, if I may put it that way. And that is why you have this crucial seat. You are the eyes and ears, and you are the heartbeat of the results of EBID and IFC and Proparco. If you could prioritize only 2 transport intervention in Ghana's cocoa, cashew, or any other raw material that you would like to choose in those belts, what would they be and why?
Okay. Simply first priority, I would say the first mile, and I'm referring specifically to getting these commodities from the farm gate. Now, we're talking of the perishables. Let me just give you quick statistics. About 40% of all the mangoes that are produced in Ghana go waste, they rot. 40%. Tomatoes, 40%. Because the processors are processing just around 30% of all the mangoes. Some of it is induced by lack of market locally when the global market is looking for tropical fruits. But because there are handicaps on the way, to be able to go there, compliance and all of that. So 40% is statistics. Tomato is close to that. The other ones can be, I mean, if you grow pepper, you can dry the pepper and store it and all that. So part of the 40% is not just because of lack of access to market. It is simply as a result of poor infrastructure, the farm gates. Now, during the rainy season, trucks of cocoa even get logged out. And by the time, sometimes for a week, and by the time they get out, cocoa has absorbed moisture and the impact is going to hit the processor in the factory. So the first mile is very important. Same thing for mangoes. If you harvest mangoes and you cannot get it to the processor within 24 hours, you've lost it. So first mile is important. Now, most of it is driven by government doing it, but the lending partners, Pascal and Carl, have really mentioned certain things, and I'm sure that viewers who are in the same area as me will have some heartwarming that indeed there's a ray of hope, because you can just see your whatever rotting. The other bit, the other priority in terms of transportation intervention, because I've also worked in the processing space for cocoa and a bit of cashew, is really the last mile to the ship. And I'm happy that there is some funding going into port infrastructure, and not just building the physical infrastructure, but facilitating through IT and all of that, just simply to facilitate and make sure that the exporter of the raw materials does not suffer frustrations at the ports, and that things can be processed. Let me just add one quickly. Inland ports and economic zones, fantastic when Carl mentioned it. Why does everybody have to carry all their mangoes, for instance, to Accra or Tema? And I saw it in Zambia live. They've created they've created economic zones in the various areas. And these are mostly agriculturally driven economic zones where things are processed. If there's a coaching facility, it can be stored there before it's put on the ref truck back. These really will be revolutionary in this country. And I'm just hoping that one day we'll start seeing them. Thank you.
James, we've come to the last part, and I want to keep you right where you are. I know that we are having this conversation from farm to the port. We're talking about financing, the value chains. But let's be honest, this may also sound to the layperson as, I will never know how to find EBID. I will never know how to find IFC. I will never know how to find Proparco. So let us break it down and let me use you. Let me borrow your wisdom. As somebody who is sitting at the forefront of this booming industry, which I call agriculture, what would be your key words to, let's talk about human capital, to the youth, SMEs, SMIs? What would be your key calls to action to them to take advantage of this greatness and this hope that we've heard here over the last hour and a half?
Right. I would say my first comment is really to tell the youth that there is huge opportunity, especially listening to everything we've discussed this morning. You talk to the youth, and I talk to the youth. I engage them. They don't want to get into agriculture or farming in whatever level, even as processors, and they'll tell you that there's no funding. But we are discussing, we have, two major funding organizations that are telling us, maybe even three, that it is indeed possible, and that all you need to do is to show viability by showing some seriousness on the ground. I believe that even if it becomes necessary, some of the funding can go. You do not need to show a lot of track record as a farmer, but some of it can go into green fields, for example. I believe that there might be some space. So huge opportunities in agriculture. And before we sat down here, I spoke about the fact that I had a very white-collar job. Very white collar, and I rose to the level of a CEO in about 3 or 4 corporate organizations. I'm not just enjoying the greenery on my farm, I'm also making money. And it's real, and I tell people that if you doubt it, and you are looking at me and listening to me, come and see.
That is an open invitation, and I'm going to ask my dear brother, Angelo Dazi from EBID, to bring each of us there. We want to tap into your hope and your prosperity.
Fantastic.
James Watting, thank you so much. Andrews, let's come to you. Your last words, your parting words, and why people should really pay attention to this space, Andy, what would they be?
I would say there is hope. You only have to find it. I mean, during our pre-interview discussions, I think one of the things we talked about is the youth and the power they have in their hands. There is so much information out there that they can find and follow up, and we are there to support them through the journey. That was the reason why I said my favorite part of our intervention was the technical support and the advisory services that we give. It is free. You only need to reach out to us.
Okay, so James has invited us to the farm. EBID is inviting us to tap into knowledge. Where is IC inviting us to? What would be your parting words, Kyle?
Take a step back and you look at the entire world and the competitiveness of economies across the world. It's just really simple that agriculture is an increasing comparative advantage in this region, in these countries, and creating jobs for the people. That we're seeing more and more opportunities, not just food, but cash crops. And not just food and cash, but also value addition along those lines for both domestic, regional through AFCTA, which we didn't even get a chance to talk much about. That's a unique opportunity, as well as global. So this is about an emerging opportunity.
Perhaps I can give you 25 seconds to talk about that very quickly.
Or the AFCTA, this is where if I can grow something here in Ghana, I don't have a market of 30 million, I have a market of several hundred million at my doorstep. This is a potential game changer in terms of viability of business models in a region. So that just helps just further wind at the back for this sector.
Beautiful. Proparco, you have the last word. Pascal, let's talk about what Proparco's, I would like to say what your hope is. That light at the end of the tunnel. It's not a dark tunnel anymore because there's light shining bright. What would be Proparco's last words, Pascal, channeled through you?
I think that SMEs are the future of Africa because today's SMEs are tomorrow's large-scale companies. And we need entrepreneurs to build these SMEs, local entrepreneurs to build these SMEs. Proparco provide resharing facilities, but also Proparco provide guidance and capacity building. But the game changer to me is the entrepreneur mindset. That is critical. They have to be resilient. I can say that they are the special forces for economic development. As such, they need to be resilient. They need to have the ability to bounce back. And that is what's going to take them to the next level. Thank you.
And it is happening right now. You know, if you thought that resilience and hope and prosperity was in the hands only of young people, check out James. James Watting, who has been around a long time. This is almost like your second coming, or your third coming, for lack of a better word. But the information is there, the hope is there. And, you know, ladies and gentlemen, I think honestly that it is clear. Let's talk specifically about West Africa. We have the resources. We know we do. Definitely, we have the talent. We know we do. The ambition is laced in all of our language and all of our lives. Perhaps, and what I've learned from our conversation on the show today is that we need coordinated financing, and we're getting it. We need infrastructure, and we are building it. We need policy, and it is happening. And together, they will all ensure that the true value of our agricultural wealth is realized, not only in the region, but across the continent. And eventually, as I always say, that the world will realize that Africa is really, truly the continent it has been sleeping on and ultimately waiting for. My name is Anita Erskine. It's been an honor hosting the 4th edition of the EBID President's Roundtable. A big thank you to the wonderful EBID team. Angelo Dadzi, we thank you. Anita, Natalie, and all your team back in Lome, and those of you here in Accra and across the sub-region and around the continent of Africa. We celebrate you. And this has been the 4th edition of the EBID President's Roundtable. And you can take a look at everything we said. Send in your questions and your comments. We'll continue to monitor all of EBID's social media pages. Until then, a big thank you to the Metro TV team. We love you. Metro TV has, always been a great family and always been a partner, and we thank you for it. Everyone, please do have a fantastic week. Make money and take advantage of the wealth right here in Africa. See you next time.
Africa.